President Trump uses Sleepy Joe as an insult. It's practically a Biden campaign slogan. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this episode of Bill Whittle Now is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Bill, I'm saying this because of a column I read in Politico by Tim Alberta, who is like their senior reporter for national politics or something like that. And in the column, he starts off by describing an event he went to a couple of years ago that Joe Biden was speaking at. And it sets up with this incredibly warm, welcoming crowd. And Biden gets up there and then gives perhaps the worst political speech this man has ever seen in his life. And he's not saying that Biden has improved a lot since 2018 when he heard that speech. No, Alberta at Politico is saying that Biden is pretty much the same as he was then. And that's exactly what America needs now. And I'll read you a quote from the column. He, meaning Biden, has run, objectively speaking, one of the most monotonous and predictable and uneventful campaigns for president in recent memory, and it has been nothing short of superb.
By that logic, if he didn't run at all, he'd be perfect.
The only way to make it better is to not appear at all.
Yeah. If you really want to run a lackluster campaign, then don't run anybody. Imagine how perfect that would be for the country.
Well, what he's saying is that's what the country wants now. The country is tired, essentially, as what he calls the Trump show, and the country is now looking for something that is not exciting, not eventful, that is, frankly, dull.
Well, he's wrong.
And how so?
This swell guy, just regular old Joe from Scranton, as those of us who've been paying attention have known forever, is a front for a crime family. It's just it's an extortion machine and an influence buying machine. This whole thing is an act. He's not a nice guy, and he's not. If Joe Biden were smarter, he'd be more dangerous. But that's it's hardly a recommendation for the president of the United States. And furthermore, if you really, as I say, why not just run a cypress stump or some other inanimate object? Just run a log, and then you don't have to worry about any of these things. This kind of thing is exactly the kind of thing that you would do when you know that your candidate doesn't generate any enthusiasm whatsoever, and you try to turn that into a virtue.
So enthusiasm would seem to be a benefit to the Trump campaign, but in fact, it's a hindrance.
Well, if I'm in a political race and my opponent is turning out 50,000 people everywhere he goes on 24-hour notice, and my guy can't get 30 people to an event announced months in advance, and this is my job to cover for this guy, then I'm going to talk about how wonderful that is and what a great thing it is. And if I have to spin it any way I want to, I'll just take whatever way I want to. He cannot possibly be suggesting that it would have been that Joe Biden would be better, that Joe Biden would be doing better than, let's say, Barack Obama. If Barack Obama decided to run again and thousands of people were coming out to cheer him on, he can't possibly be suggesting that would be worse for the Democrats, because what the country really wants is peace and quiet.
I don't think he's really saying that. I think what he's trying to say is that the nation goes through seasons. And for example, I'm paraphrasing here.
Like the dark winter that's coming, for example.
In one paragraph, he says, in 2008, voters were looking for inspiration, thus Barack Obama. In 2016, voters were looking to rock the boat, thus Donald Trump. In 2020, voters are looking for a break.
Well, if he's correct and Joe Biden wins, then voters are going to get quite a break. They're going to get the kind of break that we haven't seen in this country in almost 100 years. But I don't believe the argument. I think the argument is just more of this spacious kind of, let's try to turn whatever liability we have into an advantage,
So you really don't think there's anybody out there, especially in the non-committed, non-extreme part of either party? Because I'll grant you that the Democrats are hard after their guy, no matter who their guy is. The Republicans are hard after their guy, no matter who their guy is. And there's a bunch of people who aren't technically really classifiable as Republicans who love Donald Trump and they're hard after their guy. But that's not where the race is going to swing in these swing states. There's going to be a handful of people who are kind of in the middle who really feel like it's their patriotic duty to vote, but don't really care for either one of these guys. And you don't think there's any problem in that group with people saying, you know what, I'm just sick of the show?
The reason that I think that he's wrong is because if he was right, if the country was screaming for just peace and quiet and Biden levels of enthusiasm, then I'd be seeing Biden signs everywhere. But I live in Los Angeles, and I have never seen ever in my life seen anything like as few political stickers on cars as I've seen now. I have seen 2 Biden lawn signs, and at this time of year, it's usually just everybody out there trying to signal their virtue. And so, if this guy's theory was correct, then there would be. If this is what Americans wanted, then there'd be tens of thousands of people coming to Joe Biden rallies just so they could soak up the boredom. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And neither does there seem to be the case for broad-based political support for this guy in terms of a desire for this guy. Now, he may win the election based on people having had enough of Trump and being told by the media for 4 years that this guy committed all these crimes that Joe Biden, in fact, committed. And if that happens, then we know that big tech and big media are unbeatable. But to suggest that this is a form of popularity, that this is a form of desire, that this is exactly what the voters want, would require some evidence. And the evidence that would require is people would be enthusiastic about this choice to calm down, and they would go out and show up for him. But the fact that nobody is telling me that just the opposite is true, is that nobody's excited about Biden. It's true that Trump is a polarizing figure, and the people who are opposed to Trump may win the election out of just basic hatred for Donald Trump. But it does make me wonder. I was wondering about this on the way in. All the people that got upset about Donald Trump saying that coyotes brought children over the border, and all of these big liberal brains screaming, "That's impossible. A coyote is just a small dog. How Trump is an idiot." He's just an idiot. Trump is such an idiot. No,
I'm still. There's nobody
stay
saying
with me.
that. Are they really saying?
Are you kidding me? There's hundreds of thousands of people who said that. Hundreds of thousands of blue check people said that, and it just makes me wonder when I hear that. When I hear people saying Trump is such an idiot that he actually thinks coyotes bring children across the border, it makes me wonder. Now, those people are being embarrassed publicly because they're beginning to finally understand that, no, coyotes is a term for people who smuggle humans across the border. But the point that they're never going to get is if you're that wrong about Trump on coyotes. In other words, if you think that this man is so stupid to say something like that, when in point of fact, it's your own stupidity and your own lack of knowledge that is making you think that this guy's an idiot, how many other things do you think this applies to? And I'd be willing to bet you it applies to 90% of the other things you think about the guy. So we're going to find out whether or not the media, the Democratic Party, and big tech have had the ability to basically cover up news stories like the Biden email scandal and all the rest of it, Biden's declining mental capacities, the idea that Donald Trump catastrophically botched the COVID-19 response when in May they said that a perfectly handled epidemic might kill 200,000 people, on and on and on and on and on. If Donald Trump loses in a few days, then we'll know that this triumvirate of big government, big media, and big tech is insurmountable.
You know, it's interesting because I can remember you making an argument years ago that how extraordinary the Tea Party movement was because it brought people who normally do not gather in crowds, go to the streets, have rallies, right. They're not parade people, but the Democrats really are parade people. And the Democrats have been doing one thing. They may not be putting yard signs up, but they are doing one thing that might indicate a degree of enthusiasm, and that is they are flooding to the polls in early voting states to cast their ballot. Do you make anything of that, or do you just think it's the Republicans are sitting back and basically saying, just wait till November 3rd?
Well, first of all, the thing that's going to be interesting is how many of those early votes are for Trump. we know that the Democrats have been basically boosting the hell out of early voting. And especially in this case, you want to vote, a year or two before the election, because that would mean that your vote for Joe Biden is already locked in before you get a chance to hear him speak or debate, which is why this idea is not only constitutional, it's fatal. And now I understand that they're going to allow voting after the election, right? In some states.
I haven't heard that. I have heard that votes will be counted that showed up late in the mail in some places like Pennsylvania.
I have heard, I may be wrong, I pray to God I'm wrong, but that that a move has passed, that the Supreme Court didn't block a move to say that you could continue to vote for 2 or 3 days after the election after Election Day in Pennsylvania.
In any case, what do you make of the enthusiasm? You think that Democrats may be rushing to the polls in early voting states right now to cast ballots for Trump?
Oh, I'm not saying that Democrats are rushing to the polls to vote for Trump. I'm saying that the assumption that every single early vote is a Biden vote, I think is ridiculous. So the question is, what percentage of the early voting is for Trump? California, for example, I don't remember what the numbers were. I want to say it was 56-44, something like that. That Hillary carried California by, which is the bluest of the blue states, means 44% of those votes were for Donald Trump. And so while I think early voting favors the Democrats, and while I think Republicans are waiting for Election Day because being people who respect laws and traditions and understand the value of things like the Electoral College and an election day, are mostly going to vote on Election Day, to suggest that all of the votes that go in early is just automatically a Biden vote is just plain wrong.
I think there's another thing to be said for voting on Election Day, and that is that I'm voting for the last man standing.
Well, again,
when you have a situation like this.
You make an interesting point. It makes you wonder what would happen if Joe Biden were to kick the bucket and die before the election day. What does that mean? Were the votes that were cast for Joe Biden for the last 3 months, or for Donald Trump for that matter? If you want to turn around, doesn't matter. It's just about early voting. It's not about candidate choice. If you vote 3 months before the election, and the candidate dies a week before the election,
or is merely unable to continue.
I'm not calling for people to be killed. I'm just saying people occasionally die.
Sure,
it's been known to happen. How many times does a candidate die? And the answer is usually just the once. But my point is, what does that mean? Does that mean that the vote automatically goes to Kamala Harris? Does that mean that those votes are invalidated? What does it mean?
It may mean that those delegates in the electoral college balloting are no longer committed to that particular candidate.
Yeah, right. That's right. And so all of this is designed to destroy. It's all designed to destroy the safeguards of a republic in the name of democracy. That's the Democrat strategy, is to take all of the safeguards out of a republic. And the excuse for that is to use the word democracy as the ultimate holy grail kind of thing. In other words, well, this person slept through Election Day and Donald Trump won, but they were busy doing drugs or something. But that doesn't mean we have to deprive them of their vote. Just because they were in a haze for 2 days, when they woke up and realized that Donald Trump was president, they realized, my God, that's not what I wanted.
Or they were out feeding the poor or doing something to help the needy
whatever. Yeah, I'm sure that's what they're doing. And so then the Democrats will say, well, just because they missed the election day, does that mean that their vote doesn't count? Shouldn't every vote count? Shouldn't the fact that they have a strong opinion on this count? What really does it matter what time their vote came in the mail? What's really important is that their vote is heard. Why is it that Republicans want to suppress the vote so much? And so if you do this, and they have, and they will, and since they've allowed the early voting and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on, what this means is if Donald Trump wins the election, in the eyes of God or whatever other completely non-political. Well, there is nothing else. The ocean's not going to decide who wins the election. If actual fact, if external fact, regardless of vote fraud and all the rest of it, if it turned out that more legitimate votes were cast for Donald Trump than there were for Joe Biden, then the Democrat strategy will be to delay and delay and delay and continue to find ballots that just mysteriously appeared. And who are we to say that just because somebody forgot to bring them into the polling place, that the 150 votes for Joe Biden that we found in a van last night shouldn't count? That's not fair. Are you trying to deprive those people of their vote? And my answer to all of this is yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. It's exactly precisely what I'm saying. If you cannot go to a polling place and put a legitimate ballot in a box, then you have lost your vote for that election cycle. I've said it 1,000 times before, and I'll say it again. A vote is a political action that has to be executed. It's not your opinion. It's not how you feel. It is an action that has to be completed in the same way that passing your driver's exam has to be completed. You have got to do certain things, and the minimum things that you're required to do to live in this country now used to be that you'd have to take 2 hours every 2 years or every 4 if you're running for national office, if that's all you care about. You used to have to take 2 hours every 4 years to go someplace, stand in line, put little dots or little levers or whatever the case may be, or touch the electronic voting screens, which could go anywhere and nobody knows how those things are protected, but put that aside. That was your civic responsibility. That's basically all we ever asked you to do, was to go down on one day every 2 years and spend 2 hours of your time. And that's probably uppercase. Most people in small towns and other places get in out of polling place much faster than that. But that's all we expected of you. And that's too much effort. So now, why not just vote? Really, if you want to take this to its logical conclusion, why don't they just issue votes for the 2024 election right now? Why don't they issue the ballots now? I mean, really.
It occurs to me, Bill, that if Joe Biden does not win this election, then anybody who is paying right now to advertise on Facebook or Twitter should immediately cancel their advertising budget on both of those social media platforms, because I have never seen a bigger push specifically targeted at getting people on the left to show up at the polls. And if Joe Biden doesn't win, it means advertising on social media doesn't work.
I'm not much concerned about advertising because political advertising has been here forever and people have a right to express their opinion through advertising. It's a product like anything else. You have a right to, if you've got a right to vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump, then you've also got a right to stand in a public place and say, I think you should vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump. That's your right.
But the news manipulation algorithm doesn't work either.
That's a different story, because now we're not talking about advertising. Now we're talking about control of the information that people base their votes upon. And after 2016, it took them a year to get over the fact that this actually happened. And after that, big tech and big media and big government decided that we cannot make that mistake again. And we will do whatever we have to do to make sure that people don't get both sides of the story. Because if they do, then they're not going to vote for the Democrats. So the Hunter Biden email story is such an enormous deal because it shows you the lengths to which they are willing to go in order to accomplish this coup. I maintain that you could make the case that, and I think considerably make the case, that the election has already been stolen. Whether or not they get away with it is going to depend on the margin of victory. But when newspapers won't cover this story, and when newspapers meaning CNN and all the rest of it, and when big tech allows stories linking to Donald Trump and his allegedly Russian support, but then not only doesn't allow or promote stories to Hunter Biden thing, but that if I'm sending an email to, or if I'm sending a Facebook message, or I put something up on my Facebook page, I put it up. and I say, you should check out the story about Hunter Biden in the New York Post, and Facebook pulls that down, then the election has been stolen. It's already been stolen. Now, whether or not it's enough to actually affect the result, we're going to find out. But in any event, they've taken, how many percentage points is this worth? 10, 20? If you were to take all of the effect of the lying of the media and big tech's decision and ability to swing information at people the way they want to, and then you add to that the Democratic Party's ability to change the rules when they want to, and to do it just simply at whim, and then the rest, of course, the real issue is the rest of us put up with it, then you're looking at 30 or 40 points of a headwind. And if you take those 30, 40 points out and switch them the other way, in a fair world where information was fairly shared among the people, Trump would win by 70 to 30. But we don't live in that world. And we're going to find out right now, we're going to find out in a few days whether or not it's too late. If it turns out that Biden wins this election, it's not a question of, gee, he's his guy and my guy. I'm using evidence. I'm using the evidence of the COVID-19 numbers. I'm using the evidence of the emails and their refusal to cover that. I'm using the evidence of a 2-year investigation on the part of Mueller that turned up nothing. I'm using the evidence of an impeachment proceedings that turned up nothing. I'm using evidence to say that if it goes that way, then we are going to have to realize that this triumvirate is unbeatable. And that means I think it's time to stop pulling on this rope to try to stop the country from going into the ocean, and just cut the rope and say, well, okay, now we have to protect whatever is, we have to protect the 100 million Americans who understand what this country's about, understand the genius of it, and understand the rules that were put in place to avoid the abuse of power. And we need to concentrate that group of people, and we need to let the rest of them go to the hell that they're so determined to make for themselves, and that they're succeeding in making in places like Portland and Seattle and Los Angeles and all the rest.
The members of BillWhittle.com have made this program possible. In fact, some 40 plus programs every month because of the generosity of our members. They also run their own blog and vigorous discussion in the comments section at BillWhittle.com. You can't see that if you're not a member yet, but if you go right now to BillWhittle.com and click that big green Become a Member button, it will open a whole new world of possibilities for you and fellowship with the kind of people that you thought weren't out there anymore, the kind of people you'd like to become friends with. It's a lot of fun. Hope you'll take a moment right now to go to BillWhittle.com and do that. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.